So The Crow is one of Lionsgate's newest film and the second adaptation of, the original Chainsaw Bar comic featuring the character Eric Draven. First one being, of course, Brandon Lee, may he rest in peace. And let me just say, when I went into this film, I already knew before I even walked into the theater, before I even walked into the cinema itself, that this movie was already getting slammed like crazy. I already knew, but so my immediate thought right away was to completely shut down the nostalgia thought inside of me. Like, push Brandon Lee's version to the back of my mind while still showing support, be completely unbiased, have the lowest amount of expectations for this movie so that I could give an honest review of it. Let's start off with the plot line. So, we all know The Crow's story in a nutshell. We all know that it's a revenge story about a boyfriend who comes back from the dead to seek revenge for his lost girlfriend by going after the people who killed and murdered the both of them. But even though that story does happen here, it seems like Rupert Sanders wanted to give it more depth. He wanted to give more character development, wanted to get to know the characters more. So, we got more of Shelley Webster, about her backstory. We got a little bit more about how Eric and Shelley met. And, that, in my opinion, was good. In the beginning, at least. That was a good part to add in the beginning to give them more depth. Because we didn't get a lot of that in the first movie, or the original with Brandon Lee. But there were some expansions here and there that I thought were not good. But there were some other concepts in this story that I could get behind. And they kind of fit okay with this movie. So, even though there were a good bit of concepts that were bad, there were also a good bit that were also good. So, that's not a bad thing. You really would have to see them because I'm not going to give away spoilers. But at the start with the concepts, they weren't half bad. Now let's move on to the characters here. Let's start with, of course, the Tyler character, get him out of the way. Bill Skarsgård playing Eric Draven. How does he compare to Brandon Lee? Not even close. But like I said, let's not try and be biased here and just compare it to the original. Let's look at the good things here. Now, yes, this character does have a lot of flaws. First of all, he looks nothing like Eric Draven. Honestly, he looks more like the Crow from Crow's Salvation than he does here from the original Crow. And I don't know what the idea behind his tattoos are, but tattoos on the face, that did not work here. If he wanted tattoos in other places, that's fine. But the face tattoos, I don't know what Hollywood's idea of doing that was, but that does not suit well for the Crow. And honestly, the way he plays it, Bill Skarsgård tried to give his own idea. Like a lost child, kind of. That's kind of like what his Crow was. Whereas Brandon Lee's Crow was more passion, emotion. The only emotion that Bill Skarsgård's character kind of brought into this one that really shined more than anything was anger. He just kept his anger inside the whole time. And then, of course, it just later came out. But that's pretty much all the emotion that he showed. And the Crow is kind of supposed to be an emotional character. So, if you're comparing it to Brandon Lee's, it's awful. But if you look at it on its own, you could say it's okay. That's all I could say right there. Now let's move on to the character who played Shelley Webster, and that was the actress's name is FKA Twigs. She's some kind of singer. Now, I really can't compare her to the 1994 actress who played Shelley because she didn't get much attention like she did in this film. I feel like that was the big thing they wanted to try and give her more of a story, part of the story as well. But we all know that really the Crow's story is not about Shelley. She has a small part of it. It's mainly Eric's story. So, if they wanted to give her a little bit more attention in here, yeah, that was fine. But, they kind of stretched it a little bit. Yes, at times it was okay. I felt okay with it, but they just seem to have stretched it a little bit too much. I think actually would have worked better is if they actually did longer flashbacks with Shelley. Not actually had played out a big old long story or anything like that. But, that's how they chose to do it. And I really wasn't feeling the character who was playing Shelley at all. She didn't bring a lot of emotion into this role. Now let's finally talk about the villain, who is played by Danny Houston. And let me just say, this is the first Crow movie, don't quote me on that, because I have not watched Wicked, Prayer, and Salvation so long, so I don't really remember their villains to save my life. And honestly, I don't think I want to remember, because both those movies were horrible. But this is the first Crow movie that I recall where the villain was actually supernatural. And honestly, I can get behind that idea. The Crow actually going up against a supernatural villain. So I mean, I can totally get behind that fact, other than him just being some normal thug or gang member or mafia member, whichever one that the Crow is always going after. Because, I mean, it makes it seem like he's on a even playing field and actually has a challenge. But I felt also Danny Houston's character was kind of bland. Like, it didn't really... It felt like he was missing a key trait. Honestly, I don't know I can't really say what it is, but it's definitely something missing there that could have made him, like, a really solid villain. His villain was okay. And finally, let's talk about the action sequences that happen in this movie, because this is something I really wanted to talk about, because it also goes into line with Bill Skarsgård's version of The Crow. The action sequences relied heavily on gore. Lots of blood everywhere in this movie, but the original film had a lot more action, in my opinion, than this movie, because it seems like this movie was a big build-up. Lots and lots of build-up, because in the beginning, it seems like the Eric Draven in this film doesn't fully embrace his powers in the beginning, whereas we know in the original film, he completely embraced it right from the start. So, I mean, that goes back to what I was saying, like how I felt like Bill Skarsgård's Crow is more like a lost child. But at the same time, I felt the action sequences were pretty good, but it also felt like because he didn't fully embrace his powers, it kind of felt like they gave him more weaknesses. This movie did exactly what I was kind of expecting, but it had a lot of ups and downs. But there were some ups that I felt like were good and passable, but a lot of downs that also felt, bad. Not to say, though, that the movie overall was bad. I kind of enjoyed it. I mean, though, if what I will say is this, that if you want a good Crow movie to watch, just watch the original Crow movie. I don't know if I will watch this one again, but I will say it's not a bad Crow movie. I have seen bad Crow movies, and honestly, I don't think this is one of them. This one is up there with, I guess you could say, with City of Angels, because that's the only other Crow movie other than the original that I would say is passable. When I walked into the theater, I felt at best this movie was going to probably get a C+. That was at best. But now after seeing it, I'm being nice, and I'm going to give this version of The Crow a B-. It's not bad. I mean, if you just drop the nostalgia and just go in it, watch it unbiasedly, and like with zero expectations, you can probably find this movie surprising as well. Alright, well that just about wraps up this review. If you guys have seen this reboot to The Crow, please comment here down below what your thoughts were on it. Also, if you like my other videos, you can check out here more on my channel, and always remember to stay epic!